I tested out every single augment of depth perception to figure out what each of them actually does. Is this perk really as bad as people think? Or are some of the augments more powerful than they let on? I've got the stats and the graphs, and this is how depth perception works. As always with these more analytical videos, be sure to use the chapters below to skip to whatever section you're most interested in or to the end for the final results. Starting with the base depth perception, it says that obscured enemies are keylined, which just means you can see them through the walls, and that's all the base ability does, and we can start heading on into the augment section. However, we are going to skip over the major augments because those are the most interesting and go fly through as fast as we can the minor augments because those are fairly easy. Starting with bird's eye view, which increases the scan rate of the minimap. This is very simple. The minimap usually sweeps every 4 seconds. With bird's eye view, it sweeps every 2 seconds. This reveals zombies location every 2 seconds, but it is important to note that special and elite enemies are always highlighted on the minimap. You don't need to wait for the sweep. Skipping down to further insight, this increases the perception radius from 15 meters to 20 meters, which is actually, if you didn't know, exactly how much the high contrast filter does. The high contrast filter, if you don't know, outlines all of the enemies in red all of the time, so they don't need to be obscured to be highlighted red, it just outlines them all the time, which admittedly could be too much, so hey, you might want depth perception. Next up, we have extra change, which allows us to find more essence under more things. What things, you may ask? Well, here you go. This includes ammo caches, gobblegums, crafting tables, arsenal stations, active mystery boxes, SAM trials, and the pack-a-punch machine. This does not include wall buys, the dig sites, the terminus chests. As far as I can tell, you're swimming underwater, so it's kind of hard to really test that out. The SAM reward chest, the rampage inducer, or the inactive box locations. Pretty straightforward here. There's nothing too surprising. This SAM trials could get a little confusing. This is the actual machine that it spawns in, and this is the reward chest that actually gives out. However, there's actually a glitch with extra change right now. If you save and quit and come back, it appears that the extra change doesn't give you the extra change from all of these things. What happened was, as I was testing all of these augments, I started with a different augment, I think like bird's eye view or something, and then I saved and quit, switched to extra change, and turns out none of these things gave me any essence. So I started up a fresh game, and what do you know, all of these things did give me essence. So hopefully that'll get fixed in the future. But there we go, the 3 minor augments done really quickly. Now let's delve into the fun stuff. Treasure Hunter says spot items others can miss from loot containers as well as special and elite kills. Believe it or not, that's a pretty straightforward description. When you have Treasure Hunter on, you'll notice that when you kill a special or elite enemy, it will drop more of its loot, which in some cases can even drop multiple kill streaks. This could actually be really huge for high rounders because as those special and elite enemies are dropping more and more kill streaks, you have a higher chance of dropping the mutant injection or some chopper gunners or something that could actually help you. This is definitely one you're going to want to consider running if you're going to high rounds. And the fun part is that this doesn't just apply to special and elite enemies. This applies to dig sites on Terminus and the Tomb. As you're digging up stuff, you're going to get extra stuff, and a lot of these times you can get extra armor and extra ammo, which I think is really huge ever since they nerfed manglers. And Treasure Hunter also applies to Ethereum crystals, both in Liberty Falls as well as the Tomb. Now, what's a little bit weird is that the SAM Trials chest also gives you extra loot. However, it's not from the actual loot itself, from the actual SAM trial. Like, you open up the chest and the stuff that's within the chest is the same as it always has been, but if you slow-mo it, if you look as I'm opening the chest, there's extra things popping out of the chest as if it were a dig site or another loot chest. So technically it gives you extra loot, but it's not the loot that you would want to be extra from the SAM trials. Still kind of a fun thing to mention though. And the last thing is the loot chests from Terminus. I went around and I'm going to show you some gameplay of it. Personally, I thought there was some extra things. I thought I saw like 3 or 4 things every once in a while. So I believe it also counts those loot chests as extra loot chests. And yes, I know there's a lot of high rarity stuff here. Like there's a lot of perks. There's an ether crystal in one of these guys, but that's just because I think it was after round 25, and that's a really common thing after round 25. So overall, this is a pretty solid augment. If you wanted to run this one, especially for high rounds, you're getting a lot of resources really well. And especially from those ether crystals, man, they respawn, they're really good, and the dig sites, this is a good choice. Skipping over Death Stare, we have Critical Eye, which says a small chance that a body shot becomes a critical shot. And this is where we can start getting crazy. The way I tested this out was very similar to how I did my Deadshot testing. I went to directed mode on Liberty Falls and I trained around the rooftop of the bank. I was very careful to shoot one zombie at a time and make sure it was not a critical shot. And then I counted how many of those shots stayed normal shots and then how many of them actually switched to critical shots with this augment. And here are the results. I did this quite a few times. Each one of these lines is a new round of testing. Now, the reason the shots vary so much here is because sometimes the Horde would spread out really well and I could get some extra shots on single file, but then other times they would all group together and it just wouldn't be worth it to try to get them single, so I did it multiple times. The start of a round is actually really good, so that way they're not all bunched together yet. But as you could see, with all of these shots fired, we didn't get that many critical shots transferred over. The average came to about 6% if we total up all of the normal shots and all of the critical shots and all of the shots fired, and that makes sense from my experience. That feels about right. Sometimes we got really lucky, 5 critical shots. Other times we got really unlucky, 1 critical shot and 52 shots. So overall, 6% of your missed shots, not just all of your shots, but your missed shots will transition into a critical shot, which at first doesn't really sound all that great. Especially looking at this fancy graph we have here, you can see just how minuscule that 6% really is in terms of your total shots. Now, luckily, we're not going to just look at this one graph and go on our way, because practically speaking, it's actually going to be a lot more than this 6%. Because how often are you shooting at just one zombie? Not very often. So I gathered up the entire Horde and I repeated the same test. Shooting all of these shots into the Horde is a lot easier to do because, they were all grouped together. Counting how many critical shots was very much more difficult, because how do you know the 5th zombie down actually counted as a critical shot, but you didn't see the hit marker or you didn't see the damage number, because the damage number doesn't show every single zombie that got hit. And so these numbers are actually not going to be super accurate, but they're going to be inaccurate in the sense that you're probably going to get more than this percentage of critical shots, because the more zombies you hit, the more chance that round has a chance to become a critical shot rather than just staying a normal shot. And as you can see on the lower end here, with an entire Horde, shooting the entire Horde, nearly a quarter of our rounds became critical shots. That's actually kind of insane. Here's what that looks like side by side. You can see it's pretty ineffective on just one zombie in particular, but when we have a ton of zombies all together, it can be a significant chunk of your damage. This is actually turning out to be pretty cool. But then I thought, what if I just killed the entire Horde with just normal shots? How many of them would die due to critical damage? Well, I did exactly that, and we have another fancy chart. You can see I measured how many kills I had at the start of the round and at the end of the round, how many criticals I had at the start of the round and the end of the round. And remember, I am not going for the head at all. I will admit sometimes vermin would spawn in and I might have headshotted those, so they might count towards this total. However, this total is actually pretty nuts. You can see all of our total kill gain, and here you can see our total critical kills gain, and then I split that up into the non-critical kills as well as the critical kills, so this plus this equals that, so this is the total of these two. Does that make sense? But as you can see, sometimes we would be getting over half of our kills from critical kills just by using this augment. Now, to be fair, it was round 11. I was using a pack-punched gray rarity Goblin Mark II, so it had pretty small body damage and a high headshot multiplier. The lower your headshot multiplier is of whatever gun means that you're probably not going to have as high of a percentage, but I think this speaks volumes into the power of this augment. And I'll remind you, I was only shooting the body here, and look at over 25% every time died from at least a critical kill. And you know what? I'm going to do some quick math here. We earned 165 extra critical kills. A critical kill is worth 115 points. A regular kill is worth 90 points, which is a 25-point difference here. So 165 times 25. So we got an extra 4,125 points alone, split up over 400 kills, which gives us about 10 extra points per zombie kill if you were only going for non-critical shots. That's actually pretty cool. Like I said, I was using the Goblin, and I'm sure not all of the guns would result in such a high percentage extra critical kills, but I also know that we're all kind of just dismissing depth perception because admittedly it's not that great, but this is worth worth appreciating. This is significant enough to go, hey, that's pretty cool. But now we've got to talk about the grand finale, the most frustrating augment I think I've ever tested so far, Death Stare. Your elemental weakness damage has a chance to kill an enemy that is low on health. I'm going to show you 2 different Mangler kills here from Liberty Falls on round 11. Here's kill number 1, kind of take a look at it. There you go, that's a Mangler kill. Here's our second Mangler kill, take a look at that, very good. Could you tell the difference? You saw the difference, right? It was pretty obvious the difference, wasn't it? No, you can't tell the difference? Oh, well, neither could I. I tested this thing against so many special enemies. I first, of course, tested against normal enemies, and it just wasn't doing anything. I don't know if they weren't on like weak enough health. I don't know if they don't count towards this thing. I'm gonna say that they don't count towards this thing because, I mean, they're not weak to elemental damage naturally, so I feel like that would be kind of weird. Plus, what I did notice between those 2 Mangler kills is one of them said plus 15 or plus 10 or whatever it is marked for death. That marked for death score means they died due to Death Stare. And so some of the times I would get this marked for death thing on these HV or these special enemies, sometimes I wouldn't. I tried shooting them one by one at a time. I tried shooting them really quickly to see if it was like a momentum thing. I couldn't figure it out until I tried one final time on an amalgam in Terminus. Here's what it looks like at speed. In case you didn't catch that, we're on round 39. I've got Shadow Rift, I've got Elemental Pop. This was the final thing of testing for the day that I did. I was about to give up, and then I saw this. We're going frame by frame. Look at the Amalgam's health right here. I know it's a little shaky, but you can see the damage that we're doing here. I think this is an AS Val. I'm not doing that much damage, but you can see each one of them is a little tiny tick right there. You can see just how tiny those little lines are that I'm stripping away its health. But as I get closer to here, we can see, I know it's shaky, but here we are, and boom. Look at that. Look at the power of Death Staring and be amazed. This is exactly what this augment does here. You can see it's low on health and I'm dealing elemental damage to it. And instead of going one bit by bit here, it is just going to insta-kill this amalgam at its very end. And so for me, what I decided to test, this was the clearest, this was the biggest difference. I looked back at the other examples of the, marked for death, whatever. This was the biggest health bar that I could find in the like 5 to 10 marked for death things that I could find. Admittedly, I think going to the higher rounds helped because the goblin takes so much percentage of the Mangler's health at round 11 away. I don't know if that low health threshold was being met all the time, but here we are in round 39 and clearly we have a great example. So what I did was I took the pixels, I counted the pixels in between the entire health bar for the amalgam, and then I counted the pixels in between this red part that actually got insta-killed. And to my happiness, to my surprise, it was actually pretty good. The width of pixels, that's a 1440p picture. It was 187 pixels wide, that health bar, and the health that got insta-deleted was 18 pixels wide, which is approaching 10% of the amalgam's total health. And that's really all the information that I could find. Which leads me to the result of, if you're fighting an enemy and they have 10% of their health, there's a chance that this augment will insta-kill them, which is kind of insane because if you've already done 90% of their health, 10% really isn't all that much. I will admit, it very well could be 15%, 20%. Like I said, I've looked back at all of the footage and that health bar was the biggest health bar that I could see it insta-kill. Other examples, it was really small. Other examples, it was close to death anyway. And ultimately, that's kind of the big problem with Death Stare. If I'm using the elemental weakness already, I'm already dealing bonus damage, and 10% of its health really isn't that big of a portion to take care of. Now, 10% bigger than 0%. I know you don't need a spreadsheet to tell you that. This 10% really practically didn't feel all that big of a deal, especially when you run that back, that amalgam kill in full time. It really didn't kill it all that much faster. Now, admittedly, I could have gone to round cap. I could have gone to round 55 and really tested it out then. But if you need to go to round 55 to see and feel a practical difference of, oh my goodness, great, now that's dead, then maybe the augment's not as powerful as it should be. Maybe it should be like 50% health and it has a certain amount, or 25% or 33%, or maybe it is 33% of its health and it just doesn't activate all that much. I don't know. This is the best I got, beautiful people. As always, if I'm wrong about something, please let me know. I would love to learn more about this. A good scientist likes to be proven right, but a great scientist likes to be proven wrong. So what did we learn? We learned that bird's eye view increases the scan rate from 4 seconds to 2 seconds. Extra change gives you essence under a whole bunch of stuff: ammo caches, gobblegum machines, crafting tables, arsenal stations, pack-a-punch, active mystery boxes, SAM trials machines. It does not give you extra essence under wall buys, dig sites, terminal chests, SAM rewards, chest, rampage inducer, or inactive box locations. Further insight increases the perception radius from 15 meters to 20 meters, which is the same as the high contrast mode by default. Treasure Hunter gives you extra loots from dig sites, Ethereum crystals, special and elite enemies, SAM trials, and loot chests in Terminus. This is especially powerful with special and elite enemies, especially for high rounds, giving you extra chances to roll a good kill streak, and even more ammo and armor. Critical Eye seems to have a 6% chance to turn a body shot into a critical shot. However, this compounds with collaterals, so shooting the Horde gives you an insane bonus, upwards of 25% of your shots turning into critical shots. And Death Stare appears to make it so that your elemental weakness has a chance to insta-kill special and elite enemies once they're at 10% of their total health. I also made this chart for death perception as kind of a recap. Instead of looking at like over gameplay, is this a little bit easier to look at? I'm also going to put this in the description just in case you want to save it for some reason. Obviously, death perception is not exactly the most useful thing, but you know, maybe for future augment reviews, this could be a useful format. Let me know in the comment section below. So is death perception this secret gem of Black Ops 6? Well, no. Treasure Hunter and Critical Eye are really good, perhaps better than you might have thought. Extra Change is a fun little gimmick, but if I'm being honest with you beautiful people, I don't understand the decision to include this in Black Ops 6. Stuff like Treasure Hunter, where you're earning extra loot, sounds a whole lot like something that a vulture does, so why is that not with Vulture Aid? Critical Eye, perhaps the best thing here, the chance to turn body shots into critical shots. Critical shots, why is that not with Deadshot? We already have high contrast mode, so this extra perception radius and the perception default effect is already kind of in the game in a setting for free. And then the rest of these things, you know, the increased minimap scan radius to like, you're not even zooming out on the minimap to see more of the map. It just feels really weird. And unfortunately, because death perception is in the Wonder Fizz in 3/4 of these maps, you're gonna have to wait until round 25 or use a gobblegum in order to get it, which kind of means that the extra change you get from all of the gobblegum machines and the crafting tables is gonna be basically nothing, because at round 25 you're basically set up and points don't really mean anything anymore. I know that was an alteration that was made because of community feedback, but this is probably the most underwhelming perk we have here in Black Ops 6. Don't get me wrong, I'm excited to continue testing Death Stare and really utilize Critical Eye and maybe even have some fun with Treasure Hunter. And this by no means makes Black Ops 6 any worse of a game. These things only benefit you, but it's just a very weird perk. Now, if you are looking for something that is more useful, be sure to check out this video and stay beautiful.